Dr. John Warbach. He's going to talk about the economic challenges in Michigan right now. Dr. Warbach is a professor and associate director of the Michigan State University Land Policy Institute. He's a co-chair of the MSU Extension Greening Michigan Institute, Sustainable Community Prosperity Group, and chair of the MSU Creativity Initiative Health and the Built Environment Group. He has over 20 years of university teaching and 16 years of consulting experience in community planning, policy, and design. John?
Well, good morning, and you might notice that I dated this presentation tomorrow, and that's really because I think these are ideas that we need to think about tomorrow and beyond. Or I just read the calendar wrong, one of those two kinds of things there. So let me go through that. The topics today that I've been asked to talk about are some of the economic challenges facing Michigan, but also how do we kind of face those challenges and think about that using a resilience framework. Joe and I are going to reference some of the same work by on the resilience network map done by Innate Strategies and a bunch of other people. He's going to talk more about it. I'll just mention it a little bit. But one way to look at this in thinking about resilience and economic recovery is it's an opportunity to think about the realities of the situation we face, our nation, our state, our cities and townships, and our businesses, our stakeholder groups, and so forth. What is that reality? What's causing it? And how can we intervene and make the structural behavioral changes that we need? So one piece of this is that reality. There's an economic reality, there's a physical reality, a social reality, so forth. I like to put this slide in a lot of presentations because it puts us in context of thinking about where we live. This is where we live. And all of the things that we use to make us, to make our life bearable or enjoyable are here. All the things that we make of those materials are still here. All the things that when we're done with them, they're still here. And that's not only a physical reality that we need to face, and I was talking to somebody about the area of concern here in the local river that we've put so much stuff back in to make a setting toxic, but that's also a business opportunity to deal with that cycle of materials we use, how we use them, and the waste that from those activities that can actually be food for another activity. So if we think about the, resilience, if you have a body of people that are committed to causing a shift to resilience, thriving, quality of life, and so forth, you can have factors that contribute to generating commitment, or you can generate apathy, and that's the choice. Obviously, this is a group that's committed to resilience here, but as you deal with folks that you meet in your everyday lives and professional and political lives, that's something important to think about. If you're talking about maybe net resilience, you can develop resilience or you can lose it. And developing resilience has to do with things like creating a habitat, a natural habitat, a built habitat that's conducive to our life, and economic activity that supports a local economy, having access to the resources you need locally, and how many people are engaged in high quality decision making. You lose resilience through economic shocks, ecosystem shocks, political shocks, and social shocks. So one of those shocks in terms of economic challenges facing Michigan is the loss of jobs here through this transition from an old economy to a new economy. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard that term before, new economy, old economy. Either this is a crowd that doesn't raise their hand, Joe, or we'll have a learning experience a little bit later on. I'll talk about that difference. And you can see from the line here, the decline in manufacturing as a percent of gross state product. The red line is Michigan, the black line, United States. You can see it was a bit more severe decline for Michigan than the nation. In that period from the 60s to late 2000s, 860,000 jobs were lost, 1 in 5 jobs in 5 years. If you can see this line at the lines at the back, there's a red line kind of going up this way. That's the service economy. The darker line, blue, is going down. That's the manufacturing economy from 1969, early 1970s, to into the 2000s. You think about that difference. Certainly that makes for a different kinds of a makeup of jobs. But what else does that mean for our economy? Well, one of the things is that we don't tax services. So you have a situation with a government that does not have as many funds to spend on public purposes. And you certainly can debate what those purposes are, but that's just a reality and a loss of revenue. So also, when we've lost people, we've had some out-migration of Michigan. The last census, Michigan was one of the few places in the country that actually lost population. That isn't just a loss of people. There's a loss of economic impact as a result. And Land Policy Institute has done a study. So these two columns, the one I think on your left is the first half of the previous decade, the other column towards the second half. And we looked at the counties in Michigan that lost people and what that meant in terms of lost labor income, lost property type income, jobs, total economic output. And the 31 counties in Michigan that lost population early in that decade resulted in almost 800 million in lost economic output. It was greater. 63 of our 83 counties lost population in the second half of the decade. Just 3 years with a total loss of 1.9 billion in economic output. So having people in the economy makes a huge difference for that economy. The housing market certainly has suffered a severe decline, had excess inventory. That affected unemployment as well, as people found it difficult to actually move. They were locked into houses or they simply had to abandon them. But Michigan apparently is leading the nation in market recovery, which is a good thing. And apparently Southeast Michigan is doing the best. There's a decreasing inventory, increasing prices. But the market is also influenced a little bit by condition, age. And I noticed I think in Monroe County, a lot of the houses are pre-1960. So whether that makes a change or not. And then we'll look in a few minutes that the market characteristics for housing are changing dramatically. This graph shows Michigan per capita income deviation and change over time, but the idea I want to talk about in the next couple of slides is the link between educational attainment and household income, or average household income. And you can see at the beginning of the graph, about 1970, Michigan was ranked 13th in the nation in average income. But by the end of this graph close to the end of the first decade of the 2000s, we were ranked 34th in the nation in average household income. Here's a graph with, or table with the 1970s over on your right. The far column is a percent of people with a bachelor's or higher degree education. The next column is per capita income in the 70s. Then we moved to 2007 in the same group, and you notice that on the top there's District of Columbia, Delaware, and so forth have stayed pretty high in terms of educational attainment, but also in average income. The last row there is Michigan, and you can see that in 1970, Michigan ranked 32 in the country in terms of education, but 13th in average income, per capita income. But by 2007, we still were in the same range in terms of educational attainment, but we dropped to 34th in per capita income. And that shows the relationship in the economy today jobs require a much higher level of education than they did just 30 or 40 years ago. These states are the bottom, the lowest per capita income. You can all see they're pretty low, or have stayed low in average educational attainment, and have stayed low in ranking in terms of income. There are projections that over the next 30 years, the high education industry jobs will increase by 300, 400,000 or so, but the low education industry jobs are going to shrink in the state by 60,000 or so. Another economic challenge is the demographic shift, the composition of families in particular. We'll see that in the first column of figures there, 1960, a projection to 2040, that in the USA, households with children, the first line, will shift from 48% to 26%. In Michigan, down there, from 49% to 25%. So what does that mean for your communities if households have so few children, or so few households have children? On the top, the section, the third line is single or other households are going to increase from 13% of our households to 34%. In Michigan, a similar 12 to 36%. So if we have so few households with children, if we have so many households that are singles or and empty nesters and so forth, what are we doing in terms of designing and planning for housing? We have continued since World War II to plan for certain types of neighborhoods and communities, and it doesn't anymore reflect the reality of our nation, of our population. This is a look at some of the market shifts. So on the left, prediction that we are shifting to a need for 15 million more housing units that are attached. Probably another 40 million units of small lot housing, single family housing. But we'll have an excess of 23 million large lot housing units in the country. So what is that? How do you do that? What do you do with that information in your community and planning for the future? One of the things we're hearing, I remember reading from a headhunter that he was having a hard time getting engineers and high-tech graduates to come to Michigan because, especially Southeast Michigan is where he was working, because they thought it was ugly. Now, I think you have a pretty community here, but this is a comment on all of Southeast Michigan. So there is a preference for a different type of community. These are not in demand so much anymore, and there's certainly a growing preference for these types of relationships. Some are small town, some are larger. Some of this shift has been mapped. You see Chicago area on the left, Detroit and Southeast Michigan on the right. The red dots represent where singles are living. Young professionals, no kids, sometimes married, but the blue dots, the families with children. And so you're noticing the people without children are tending to congregate in urban areas and seeking urban amenities and so forth. So there's a strong demand for that. So if we're talking about how you prosper, how you become resilient economically, some of the thought leaders in this area are suggesting an increase in locally owned businesses that are practicing the triple bottom line. So, people, planet, profit, or social equity, environmental protection, and economic vitality. That the employment is meaningful to people, or living wages. You have resources available locally. Businesses are innovating, and there's sustainable access to land and to water and energy. If you're failing economically, you probably have a reliance on non-locally sourced goods and services. Businesses are not adding value to what are local assets, and there's a high percentage of consumer debt. Now, you probably won't see this in the back, but the table talks about a little bit of how we have gotten here in a transition from, or a lack of transition from, an old economy on the left and characteristics of a new economy on the right. An old economy was an inexpensive place to do business. The philosophy was to attract companies. A high-quality environment was a luxury. We didn't support that through local taxation and investment. And economic development was government-led. Large government meant good services. On the right, the new economy, being rich in talent and ideas is key. You attract educated people. You don't worry about attracting companies so much. Physical and cultural amenities are extremely important to attract the kind of people who will populate those places and those businesses. And success was around the ability to learn and adapt. So partnerships of business and government and nonprofit sectors are essential to that kind of thing. The old economy, the industrial sector was manufacturing. New economy, diversity is extremely important, but clustering, so that if you have some central economic sectors, either agriculture or energy or other high-tech manufacturing or IT, then the support businesses are related to that, and there can be many and diverse support businesses clustered there. That helps develop the knowledge base, the support services, the connections, the synergies that will make that economy work. Tends to be communications dependent. In the new economy, it was fossil fuel dependent. In the old economy, people follow jobs. Now, people, have you seen this? Your kids or nephews and nieces and grandkids, the kids are going to a place they want to live and say, well, I'll bartend until I find the job I went to college for. So that's a huge shift we're finding now. The other piece of people mattering is population and the number of people who are entering the middle class. Buying power is becoming extraordinarily strong in other places in the world. And so they will have the access to and the economic clout to buy resources. You know, China is talking about investing in a railroad that will take oil, coal, wheat to the Pacific, from Canada to the Pacific coast, so it can be exported to China. And they're buying land in Africa to grow crops for their people. So we probably will need to depend a little bit more on domestic resources, because we will have a harder time competing in the world market for them. So people move to quality places, and communities that consider population attraction strategies are the ones that are going to be succeeding. These talented people look for quality places to live, and work, and play. Active, dynamic living environments. There are amenities like parks, outdoors, thriving farms, hunting, fishing, very diverse lifestyle choices, and lots of opportunity for creativity and risk-taking. Green infrastructure, extraordinarily important. We've done some studies that show that people at all ranges are attracted to green infrastructure elements, but probably differently. An older population to a certain set of elements like quiet landscapes and forests and open spaces, a middle range, walkable communities, parks, recreation. Younger people, more dense communities, but with green, with recreation opportunities for biking and boating and sports. Also thinking about what assets you have locally that are unique that can be built on. So we've done, Land Policy Institute has done a critical assets map, and you can get to this from our website, where there is a high percentage of people that are 25 and older with a bachelor's degree, where per capita income is already a little bit stronger. We've done natural resource, cultural resource things, energy, and so forth. And so that kind of information is critical to your local planning. We're finding that there are a lot of underutilized assets in different parts of the state. This is a huge asset, having an institution of higher education here, companies that are ready for the next stage of growth, water resources of all sorts. Transportation is extraordinarily important. Agricultural assets are also important, as are knowledge workers, and renewable energy opportunities. So, but having those assets, but then adding value to them is going to be critical. Now, a couple of years ago, the President asked the Pentagon to come up with a new strategy to protect the United States, seeing that, you know, we've had kind of similar strategies for decades and decades, and maybe we need something new. So, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff assigned a couple of whiz-bang systems people, special ops, some of them were trained in special ops, to think about this. And what they came up was not a military strategy. It was a strategy for sustainability and economic recovery of America. So they said that strength and global competitiveness was important, and sustainable social and economic growth was going to be very important. So part of this framework looked at and said that what will be important are renewable energy systems, a healthy food system, a sustainable and efficient water resources, smart technologies to drive green industries, and a new built environment infrastructure based on green sciences, place, and culture. So if we're thinking about those places in terms of resilience, are we generating a local built environment that's conducive to life? Are we developing local natural ecosystems that are conducive to life? Or are we destroying habitat by excessively harvesting, extracting in a destructive way? Do we have ecosystem shocks? Do we need to think about the rate of climate change? And do we have diversity in our built environment and in our natural environment? So we do have renewable energy assets. Solar resources, wind resources are really quite plentiful in Michigan. So in thinking about the energy piece, I came across these recommendations from an energy forum that was held, I think, only about a month ago. And their key recommendations were that on the importance of cooperation and partnership between the public and private energy sectors, need for a legislative framework that facilitates the application of technologies and encourages investment in clean energy, the importance of prioritizing energy efficiency when creating energy demand strategies. Renewable energy has great potential. The government's role in national strategies and integration of diverse energy sources is essential, and immediate action needs to be taken to conserve resources and ensure a secure energy supply. And all of this will help reduce carbon emissions and maintain the quality of the environment for future generations. What region do you think came up with these recommendations? Where?
Monroe County.
Monroe County. California. I thought that one might come out. Dubai. This is the oil states of the globe saying we're planning to get beyond fossil fuels. And if they're if they're thinking this way and doing it, gee, what are we doing, and where are we? How soon can we come along? So a green, as recommended in that national strategy, kind of moving to a green economy. A green economy has to do with, well, really, some of our historical green sectors: agriculture, natural resources, forestry, tourism, generating technologies that reduce carbon footprint, energy efficiency, using green assets in new ways, reduce, recycle, reuse, redesign, repurpose is all important. Two things that we've also been talking about in terms of self-sufficiency. We need to look critically at the use of some of our non-renewable energy sources, because there are voices saying, or analysis suggesting, that those are not as viable futures for us because the prices will soar. we are creating additional sources of energy, of fossil fuel energy and oil in this country, it's going to be exported because the demand and the price structure will suck that to other parts of the world, which is important. So here's just a kind of an exercise, a mental exercise. And this kind of looking into the future. I don't know if you've heard of living buildings yet. You've probably heard of green roofs and so forth, but there's technology going beyond that of buildings that are growing things inside. It could be food, it could just be plants to clean the air inside the building, green roofs and so forth. So if we imagine buildings that harvest the energy of the sun, sequesters carbon, makes oxygen, has on-site wetlands and botanic gardens, recycle nutrients, fresh air, flowering plants, daylight, roof covered in soil and other plants to absorb rain, wildlife there. So it's a kind of an idea of a harmony of energy flows and living things and so forth. What about business opportunities? Each of these really is a business opportunity for a company or a startup or innovation. Harvesting energy of the sun, sequestering carbon, making oxygen, the wetlands, flowers and all that. So we can be thinking of a new way to build that is an economic engine for us. Just a little bit of caution. We need to think carefully and be patient. This is a chart from Charlie Ballard, an MSU economist, that looks at each of the kind of recent recessions. The black line is the 1982 recession, the red 90, the blue one 2001. But the green is the 2008-2009 recession. Shows us the relative change in employment. So we have farther to go than we've had in past experiences of recession. So we need to be perseverant and plan well and have a little faith in our character to be resilient. So leave you with that.